I have to tell you guys, I now fully believe that Officer Tatum is one of the dumbest motherfuckers on YouTube, period. He has, he lacks the most basic critical thinking skills that I would imagine a fifth grader would have been able to develop at this point in time. Because of this, it has led him to time after time after time again with the worst political takes I've seen on the internet. Well, some of them without being, you know, banned from YouTube. He now denies the brutality of the Tulsa 1921 race massacre. Yes, he did it. He came out. He was sitting there. He made a video, shower thoughts. He's like, actually, the race massacre wasn't that bad. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why I want to commit sewer slide. All right. Slide right on into that sewer. I don't know what's in there, but I definitely don't want to come back out after this. Bro, what? Yes, bro. This is real. Premiered 19 hours ago of him sitting there going to tell you why he thinks it's all a big lie. Here, let me provide a little bit of background, okay? So in 1921, there was a race massacre, all right? Basically, there was an altercation between a black militia, a white group of people looking to hang a black person who was allegedly said to have sexually assaulted a woman on an elevator. Now, is there any proof of that when this was coming? No. But the white mob went there and looked to and asked the sheriff, like, hey dude, instead of doing the whole like criminal justice thing, can we just kill them? And the sheriff was like, no. And then the black militia came and was like, bro, you guys are just trying to kill people. That's not cool. They got into a kerfuffle. People died. And then the white mob was like, how about we just murder all the black people? And then they burned the entire black side of the city to the ground. That's basically what happened. All right. Now, what's the point of Officer Tatum coming out against this? Well, I guess we'll find out.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen and ladies? I'm gonna go make a quick video. It shouldn't take long. First, I want to address a myth that I believe is a myth. And this is why you can hardly ever trust black people in the plight of black people in this country.
All right, starting off strong. All right, here's a lie, and here's why you can't trust black people. All right, cool. All right, epic and pog. Here's why you should never listen to black people when it comes to their oppression. Now, I don't believe you should listen to all black people, but if there's a really big thread going on of them talking about a really specific thing, I think there's probably something worth listening to there. I think this is why you shouldn't just listen to any random black person. You know what? Officer Tatum is the best example of why I don't believe you should just listen to a random black person on black issues, because this dumb motherfucker, all right, exists. People like Candace Owens, people like this guy, Tom Sewell. These are the really big reasons why you should not listen to any random black person on black issues. There's some people are dumb as fuck, and Tatum is one of them. We'll get into that.
You can rest assured that you cannot trust what black people say happened to black people in this country, to the tune that I'm willing to not believe 90% of people's lies about racism and all these other things. It is.
Okay, so basically, all right. If he hears something about black people, he'll just disbelieve it because he feels like it. Cool.
It has now gotten to the point where it is impossible for me to believe black leaders in the black struggle in America. I'm almost to the point where I'm willing to deny 90% of what people are saying. Here's why. Tulsa Massacre. Now, I did a little research. I watched a couple videos of people explaining it from a historical perspective.
Okay, so here's his groundwork. Okay, he said he did a little reading, which I think means he skimmed through Wikipedia, and then he watched some YouTube videos, and now he's going to make a 17-minute video about why the Tulsa race massacre was a lie. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the level of conservative thought. All right, this video has 200,000 views in less than 24 hours. This is how bare, all right, bare, absolutely empty their political thought is.
I did a little bit of research reading about the facts and circumstances surrounding the Tulsa massacre that it is today. It was a race riot before, I don't know, 2018. They turned in, these black activists and scholars turned it into the massacre of Tulsa. And let me give you some facts.
This is not true. This has been the Tulsa race massacre has been called such for a pretty long time. Oh, actually, since it happened, it got more mainstream to call it Race Massacre or Tulsa Massacre, specifically. But that doesn't mean that it was specifically. This is, you know what this is like? This is like when conservatives are like, nobody was talking about race. Trans people didn't exist until 2016, and then poof, out of nowhere, trans people, gay people, queer people, just out of the absolute vacuum. Okay, Nancy Pelosi did a freaking hat trick and then pulled queer people and queerness out of her sleeve. Just out of nowhere. It's incredible how small these people's worldview is. All right, it's so incredibly small. They have absolutely no possibility of any introspection outside of their incredibly small bubble. They really think that when they started paying attention to something is when something actually happened. It's like object permanence. All right, it's like a fucking little like child.
Real quick, and this is why you cannot believe. In 20 years from now, Black Lives Matter is going to be the new Martin Luther King movement, and nobody's going to correct history. They're going to act like Black Lives Matter changed the world. But let me tell you this real quick, is that in the Tulsa race riot in the 1921, it was in 1921, so in the 20s, I think it was, June, it was May 31st through June 1st. It all started because a black kid was on an elevator. He was a shoemaker. He was on an elevator with a white woman, and he was accused of raping her. People could hear her scream from the elevator. They conveniently leave out that it was reported that she had ripped clothes, and he got charged with raping her.
Dude, can you fucking imagine? Can you imagine? All right, you're sitting there, black person, all right, and a massive historical event happens, and you're like, bro, they leave out, they on an elevator. On elevator. Was it, the thing is, they said this person was ever charged. Was he ever convicted, Tatum? Was he ever convicted, Tatum? Ripped clothes. The thing is, the really big thing is that a lot of this passed through hearsay, all right? It's a lot of speculation. That's one of the really big problems with the race massacre, okay? Is because there was speculations, there was rumors going around that all of these things happened. And there was a whole bunch of buzz, and that's why the white mob was even at the jail that the sheriff was holding that guy in the first place. But Tatum likes to leave that part out.
And let's go back to what black people say happened and why it is almost implausibility that this actually happened.
Also, don't you think it's really interesting that you say that you say like race played it, because this is what he's trying to do. He's trying to downplay the effect of race here. Don't you think it's really interesting that they downplay the effect of race here? He does this so much, and then he goes on to say so okay, they're trying to say all these lies and that black people were so oppressed, but the only thing that happened is a mob came to take down the sheriff so they can kill the guy in the street without a fair trial. All right,
they
buddy.
are saying, and they want you stupid enough to believe, that he got on the elevator, stepped on her toe, and when she screamed, he was being accused of rape. As if she didn't lament to the fact that he had raped her or done anything nefarious to her. So he got arrested, and...
Wait, yeah, this was the 1920s. How long were black people out of slavery at that point in time? What, like 60 years? Is that about? Like around 60 years? Like 50, 60 years, like around there? Damn, interesting.
A black mob of people, residents, showed up to support him, to make sure he wasn't going to get lynched, because they had heard rumors that he was going to get lynched. Some of the black people that showed up was armed. This is the...
Wait, he just... this is incredible. He just skips over the fact that the reason the black militia was there in the first place is because a white mob was literally there trying to stop the sheriff from holding him in safety away from them. They literally said, "Give us the guy, we're going to kill him," before the black militia even got there. That's why they went in the first place. It's incredible.
First encounter. This is the first process.
And this is why it's really great. And this is why it's so important. And this is why it's so important that we don't let conservatives take a hold of narratives, all right? Because they will spin and lie as much as possible to make white people look as good as possible, and make black people's plight not reliant on the hundreds of years of racism that they've experienced in this country, but on their own personal failings. They're just not good enough to be as rich as white people. Okay, it had nothing to do with the slavery or the or like the systematic oppression or the redlining or the killings or any of that. Listen, it's just, you just didn't pull yourself up by your non-existent bootstraps. It's really hard to pull yourself up by your boots when you're too poor to even buy shoes in the first place. Tatum, it really is. It's kind of difficult. Pull yourself up by non-existent bootstraps. Oh yeah, and I love the second that black people like exert their Second Amendment rights. These people are like, whoa, hey, look at that, they have guns. Listen, last time I checked, I was in America.
So people that showed up to the scene was black people, some of which were armed, to make sure that the black kid wasn't going to get lynched in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the district of what they call Black Wall Street. Let's keep going. So in the spirit of these black people doing that, and there were white people who had heard that a black man raped a young girl on an elevator, they showed up. And reports say a shot was fired.
Wait, why did they show up? Wait, Tatum, why were they there? What, they just wanted to look at him? Like it was like a little zoo? They just wanted to see him? What do you mean? Oh, they said that he did something to this girl. And so they showed up. Why? Why, Tatum? What?
Fired. The reports doesn't say who shot first. It says the shots were fired. And 10 white people died and 2 black people died initially. Or something of that nature. It was more white people that died than black people initially. And
that's the only fact that he's gotten right here so far.
then when obviously rumors went around that these things had occurred, then more white people showed up and there was a full out BLM. That's what it
is. And here it is. Here it is. This is the dumbest shit I've heard in my entire life. He's like, okay, so they had a fight and white people died and then they did a BLM, which is, yeah, Soros is so powerful now he's a fucking time lord and he can go back into the past.
It was a BLM.
Imagine, and now it's like it's an action verb. BLM is now an action verb. They did a BLM.
They went, a fight broke out, white people died, so white people showed up and burnt the city down. That sounds to me an awful lot like what BLM do today.
It sounds exactly like what conservatives think. I'm telling you, dude. I'm telling you. Wait a second. I'm telling you, I don't lie. People think it's hyperbole every time I say this. Conservatives look at a picture like this, all right? And they're like, this is literally New York right now. Minneapolis actually looks like this. Like blocks of New York and Minneapolis and like California are just razed to the ground. Here. I'm telling, I'm not joking. People, Tatum looks at like, what Hiroshima looked like after the bombings, and this dude is like, oh yeah, if you showed this guy, if you like did a computer sequence and put this into color and you put this in front of Tatum, and he'd be like, oh yeah, this is what Minneapolis looks like right now after BLM got their hands on it. They literally destroyed it. BLM dropped an atomic bomb on Minneapolis. All right, people say this was hyperbole. You can hear it straight from his mouth right now. He actually thinks. It's not, I thought it was a rhetorical tool at first. They've fooled themselves into believing that these cities like don't exist anymore. And they just murdered human beings. It's incredible. BLM is when violence. Yeah, that's true. BLM is when violence. As you can see, Nazi Germany wanted to take over France. So they did a BLM. Blitzkrieg is was the early invention of BLM.
Yet they are here acting like when white people do it, they call it a massacre of black people. I don't know who was right and who was wrong in that. But
see, I'm dying. The cringe is actually killing me. Does this guy actually believe that like BLM marchers go out and murder white people? Does he actually believe this happens? Just so you know, there are 25 people who were confirmed to be dead in relation to BLM protests. Most of those people were protesters. And a lot of those people who weren't protesters were people doing protest agitation. Remember how people were saying that like, remember this like black security guard who was killed and they tried to attribute that to BLM? Remember, that wasn't BLM. It was Boogaloo Boys trying to start a race war. And all of a sudden this has something to do with BLM. BLM doesn't go around killing people. You can get mad at property damage, sure. Okay? And these aren't even homes that they're committing property damage against. It's like retail stores and usually massive chains as well, who have all of the funding and resources to fix those places. I'm sorry, the people of Black Wall Street didn't. It's incredible. This leap in logic is literally just anytime someone attacks a building, that's when you do a BLM. Remember when some far-right white nationalist agitator dude smashed a bunch of windows out of his own? Yes, where he just walked around smashing windows with his little umbrella trying to hide. I think it actually turned out that guy was a cop too. It's incredible.
But I do know that they're misappropriating facts. Your boy Joe Biden wrote or tweeted that 300 black people died. That's not confirmed at all. The confirmed numbers were, I think, 36 people died. 36 people died. I think it was 10 white and 15 black. Confirmed. There is estimates of other numbers from 75 to 300 black people. 75 to 300.
Wait, does this guy? Wait a second. Wait a second, Mr. Tatum. What do you think? What do you think about the estimates of the deaths in the Holocaust? Oh, you know what? This guy would be so gung ho where he lists off all the deaths to like communism or something when all of those are like estimates. He probably believes that 100 million statistic too. It's just super interesting how he like thinks estimates don't mean anything anymore. I'm sorry, back then we really didn't keep good track of that. Black people really weren't given a good shake by the criminal justice system in like 1921. But maybe that's just me, or maybe Tatum thinks that racism ended when slavery was done.
Estimated, none of which is confirmed. There is none of which can be confirmed. But there was confirmed about, I think it was 20 or 36 people lost their lives in it. And for the longest, it was a race riot. It had nothing to do with a massacre.
And also, I still don't know what the difference is here. 36 people is really bad, especially the vast majority of those being black people. And for what? For being black?
Of black people. And then when I was growing up, they taught us that this was white people being mad at black folks because they had Black Wall Street, as if it had something to do with black success and white retaliation of black success. When this weekend, I found out that it had nothing to do with Black Wall Street, and it had everything to do with a black man allegedly raping a white woman, and black people coming to his defense and white people coming to her defense, and a fight broke out. And just so
it's incredible to me here. Here's this one thing, okay? After 10 p.m., a group of 75 African-American men returned to the courthouse and once again were told to leave. As they departed in a single file line, a white man attempted to disarm one of the African-American men. The man resisted. In a scuffle, the weapon discharged. Both sides exchanged fire. Wow. Tatum, what happened here, buddy? Tatum, what happened? He tried to man, whatever happened to the Second Amendment, Tatum? That sounds like self-defense to me. After the guy was arrested, talk too soon to the action. By 7:30 p.m., hundreds of whites gathered outside the Tulsa County Courthouse, demanding that authorities handed over Dick Rowland. This is the guy who was arrested for the alleged sexual assault. But the officer refused. Around 9 p.m., after reports of dire conditions downtown, which Greenwood, a group of approximately 25 armed African-American men, many of whom were World War I veterans, went down to the courthouse and offered their services to authorities to help protect Rowland. That's in, oh my goodness. What? It's like he's completely butchering history, time, and space. Tatum's stupidity is cutting a hole in the space-time continuum and sucking facts of the matter just through the empty void and into the abyss, never to be seen again. It's wild. It's almost like that group of white people literally went there to try and kill this guy, and the black people were like, "Bro, let me help you." They weren't even there to stop them. They were just there to protect the guy and protect the courthouse. It's wild to me how much he'll bend himself into a literal like Auntie Anne's pretzel to try to defend black people being murdered. It's wild to me.
Now you explain to me how there's not a BLM massacre where you have Black Lives Matter going around the entire country, terrorizing communities, killing people,
fucking country,
bludgeoning people. I mean, you got them going around causing terror.
What killings? Can you point to all of these incredible massacre killings related to BLM from BLM protesters who were just killing? He literally makes it sound like BLM people were marching down the street just gunning down random white people they saw on the sidewalk. It's incredible. I was at a BLM march where Breonna Taylor was killed. Like, there were people with guns. Literally nothing happened. What's he talking about? He's mistaking other groups for BLM? No, he just sees black people and he thinks they're BLM.
Billions of dollars of damage, theft, larceny, looting around the entire United States of America. Not just Tulsa, not just Fort Worth, not just Houston, but the entire country. And black people, not all, because I'm only talking about the illegitimate folks who are—
Holy shit, you're an illegitimate black. I'm sorry, any black people in here? If you've been to a BLM protest, you're an illegitimate black, all right? He's taking your black card away.
All of this is fake. It's all a false narrative. And then I went back years ago.
This is discrediting even like history itself. This is how it's so easy for conservatives to buy into their worldview, because when they completely just dig out history and fill it in with their own narrative, to this guy, the victims of the Tulsa massacre were the perpetrators. They're the reason. He actually believes that the black mob went there to try and like hurt the good old white citizens who happen to have some rope for some reason. I don't know. For some reason, they just had some rope there. Just who could have known why they had that rope. And they harmed them, and then the white people just had to burn down the entire city.
I went back to look at slavery, to reevaluate slavery, because I see the lies and the manipulation from the media, black leaders, in this brain dead society that we live in called Black America. And the first legal slave owner was a black man. I'm losing my mind. I can't. This is the most painful experience I think I've ever had in my entire life. It's up there. This is Joker mode. This is society level. This is society level, all right, of cringe. I cannot believe this. Imagine this whataboutism. Even if this is true, let's say even if this is true, okay, what does it have to do with anything? Also, when it comes to slavery specifically didn't necessarily start with black people. For one, it started with the Native Americans. And that slave owner was definitely not white, but definitely not black. I'll tell you that much. It blew my mind. How could it be so that black—
You talked to Rob? I did, unfortunately.
Black man went to court. Anthony Johnson, look it up. That the black man went to court, won a lawsuit to own other black people. So you're telling me a white judge granted him ownership of 2 other black people as a black man in the 1600s, respected enough to go to court and have a voice in court to win the rights to own other black people for the rest of their lives. And then I went to research other people.
What does it have to do with anything? There are like court cases of, his understanding of like basic American facts are so lacking that of course this makes sense to him. Of course this makes sense to him. He built a straw man so massive that now it sucks in every single thought he has. It's as massive, it turned into a black hole. It's so dense. It just collapsed in on itself and is just sucking his brain like a freaking spaghetti out of the side of his ear, all right? And it's filled with just nothing. It's nothing in there. A perfect vacuum inside of his head.
Which Anthony Johnson was a very successful, wealthy black man at the time. And as you go through the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, you see that there's a tremendous amount of black men who own slaves, who own other black people. Hundreds of black people own slaves. Hundreds of black men own hundreds of black slaves during slavery. Another thing I found out that
what is this supposed to mean? Like, I'm genuinely curious. What is this supposed to, what's the point he's trying to make here? Like, yeah, white people enslave white people too. I mean, you can ask the Irish about that.
It blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. I went through and looked at the slave states and looked at the free states. And it was the exact same amount of free states as there were slave states. And then I did more research and I said, well, what percentage of white people own slaves? I thought it was 90%. It's like, the numbers have varied in different research that I've seen. But I've seen numbers, 6% is almost the highest number I've seen of white ownership of slaves in the South. 6%.
And how many slaves was that? Millions of slaves? Millions. Slavery's cringe. It was pretty cringe. Millions of slaves. What's this point? I don't get it. I don't understand what point he's trying to make. He's just saying things. And then, did you know that there was a time where a black person bought a sandwich during slavery? He bought a sandwich? Another thing that blew my mind, a black person bought shoes in the 1600s. Shoes during slavery. Shoes. What the fuck is he talking about?
So you're telling me 94% plus of white people didn't even own slaves. But yet our entire plight of the black community is because of slavery. Look at the 1920s.
What the fuck? Does he think that the slavery let's say there were 14 million slaves and 14 million people owned one slave, but then there's 14 million slaves and one person owned all of those 14 million slaves. I'm sorry, listen, they're still enslaved. Tatum, they're still not treated as people. Tatum, I don't know what the amounts of people who owned those people have to do with that at all.
You talk about 20% single parent rate. Now it's 70%. Black people were successful. They were working hard. They were getting their stuff done. They were building things. They were building their own arenas. They were building railroads. They had jobs. They had careers. There was a quote unquote Black Wall Street.
Man, what happened? Man, that would be really cool if Black Wall Street was around today. I wonder what happened to it. I think it'd be really interesting if we saw Black Wall Street today. I wonder whatever happened to that place. Maybe it's like Atlantis, sunk into the sea.
Concentration of black success and wealth in the 20s and 30s that we don't even see today after the civil rights movement. I'm starting to become skeptical of the civil rights movement and say,
this is like the galaxy brain level of, oh, this is the person who's like, oh, I work better under pressure. And he actually thinks, he's like, black people actually worked better under segregation. We need to bring back the lynchings. Bring them back. Bring it all back. Bring it all back. Play that back.
After the civil rights movement, I'm starting to become skeptical of the civil rights movement.
That's such a line. That's such a line. That's a combo breaker of stupid takes. He's just freaking rattling them off. Speed bag, stupid takes. Instead of the bag, it's just his freaking brain. And every time he punches it, it turns into like just gray matter mush. Holy shit. This is so sad.
And say, is the civil rights movement have a little bit of BLM in it? To where we are not told the entire truth of the civil rights movement. Are we just told what Martin Luther King said on one speech? Because Martin Luther King was a socialist. Martin King was a socialist.
Oh, well, at least he remembered that.
Okay, he had some conservative principles. He was a socialist. However, and those are things that I did not agree with Martin Luther King on. Now, are we just hearing his one speech and people are glorifying his one speech like they glorify BLM? Was it more? Rodney King was another one. Rodney King, when I got to the police academy, I realized
this is just fucking crazy. The mad ramblings of someone who belongs in a padded room. All right, could you POV your Officer Tatum's shoe after he gets institutionalized? He's just sitting in the corner talking to it. This guy's out of his mind.
That Rodney King wasn't who I thought he was, and the situation wasn't what I thought it was. I did not know that Rodney King beat a female officer almost to the point of death, and then took cops on a high-speed chase. And then I went back in the context of that whole scenario. I saw them hitting him with a baton. Rodney King never complied. He never complied. The problem is when
holy shit, this is why Tatum is such a horrible human being. All right, because he literally thinks if you're just squirming on the ground, the police have complete authority to just start beating you to death. They could just start beating you. And this is why it's, you know, honestly, I do believe it's really hard to say that we can reform the police when people like Officer Tatum are in there. As long as you're like squirming or something, the police can just keep beating you until, I don't know, you die, I guess. This is actually the same argument that Chauvin tried to use against George Floyd. Well, his lawyer, what he argued was that, well, Floyd wasn't compliant. And the dude was like, hey, bud, have you ever been choked to death? Do you think that you can sit there perfectly still as someone chokes you to death? One of the defense's witnesses, they asked him, so you think it's okay to keep up pressure, to keep beating someone if they're squirming? And he was like, yes. And he was like, so when you beat them, when you get beat, do you squirm? And he's like, well, yeah. And he's like, so how do you know that he was not being, how can you tell the difference between not being compliant and writhing in pain? How do you tell the difference between not being compliant and writhing in pain on the ground as you die and get beat? And he was like, well, I can't really tell. You can't really tell. And this is why Officer Tatum is an awful, disgusting human being, because he will see someone be beat to death by a cop and he will like, well, he's not being compliant. Every time he hits him, he writhes in pain. Maybe he should just stop. The fuck? What's wrong with you? Tatum could actually watch a cop beat someone to death and think that it was justified force.
You're beating a person with a baton and they don't comply, and you keep beating them. It don't look right. And to a certain degree, you have to do something different.
Yeah, it doesn't look right. Probably because it isn't right, Tatum.
You're just beating a man for no, you're getting down the street or beating a man for no reason. However, it was in no way, form, or fashion do I think that was racist. In no form or fashion do I think that he didn't deserve to get beat initially. He took him on a high-speed chase. The same Rodney King mentality is what we see from the black community even now. Rodney King is a Philando Castile, is a Eric Garner, is a Jacob Blake, is a Breonna Taylor.
Holy shit, Breonna Taylor was just in her house. It's incredible how many leaps this guy will make to justify people being killed by the police. Police could do basically anything. Philando Castile, yeah. It's incredible how little value he has on human beings' life. We don't have to watch the rest of this. No one's saying that these people are gods. What they're saying is you fucked them up. The really big thing that matters is I don't really care why someone was being almost beat to death after they're under control by the police. The thing is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. You know why? Because they were under the control. You had the complete obligation not to do that, and you decided to do it anyways. Officer Tatum will go to any length to justify people who don't comply with the police's death, because the police do no wrong to him. They do no wrong. It's everyone else's fault. I had to beat him to death. I had to choke him to death. I had to kill him. I just had to. Look, he was wiggling. He's wiggling too hard. And apparently in America, wiggling is a death penalty. At least Officer Tatum. What an awful garbage human being. He doesn't belong in the police force, let alone to have internet access. Honestly, he's a threat to he's the threat to society. And I won't say that lightly. He is. And honestly, he's more of a threat to society than any of the people that he mentioned who got killed by police were at the time of their killing. I'll tell you that much.